Please come into my room.
Welcome back to the MUstaSH Room. I'm your host, David Ben, and on this episode, we get a visit from Patrick. He just went through a series of ketamine experiences to help combat some depression and some suicidal thoughts and some other things that were weighing him down. His experience is amazing, very positive, very transformative, and I can't wait for y'all to hear that. We also get a visit from wifey Jill, and she talks about mushrooms and pregnancy. She's 27 weeks in, and there are a lot of health benefits to mushrooms, but also some pitfalls. And she talks about raw versus cooked mushrooms and just some other things that are really pertinent to being pregnant and trying to maintain your overall health. This podcast, there's a central theme with the ketamine experiences where depression and suicidal thoughts can really kind of weigh you down. And Patrick found ketamine as a way to kind of dig his way out of that hole. I personally went through about 10 years ago a really deep state of depression with my own suicidal thoughts. Never actually went through with anything, but it was a low point. My sister sent her husband to come get me and bring me home because she felt like I was just too volatile. And right around that time, my sister had a daughter, and I now had a niece and a new reason to live. And I wrote this poem to kind of convey how I felt after this new beautiful thing came into the world. So if you don't want to hear the poem, go ahead and fast forward a couple minutes. We are always brought to you by MUstaSH Brands and MUstaSHbrands.com. MUstaSH Room is on social media and the web. MUstaSH is how we always spell it. Enjoy episode 13 of the MUstaSH Room. Here you go. I wrote this poem in 2011, shortly after my niece Miranda was born. It's called Last Quest Ion. Why are you yet to return my calls? For help, but did you see my fall? Was there not desperation in my pleas? Did you witness my collapse and just let me be? Same questions. Last drop of hope. My voice is tired and there's no more rope. This stay of execution is self-imposed. Eyes closed, hands merged, so here we go. Why do you continue to let me exist? Why do I sometimes engage but mostly resist? If I chose a path with more checkpoints, would I be this astray? If I learned to fight before my mind closed, would I now be fighting to stay? Is it possible for me to ever love myself? Is it fair to then ask that of someone else? If leaving wouldn't shake the family tree, would I still be here? If these questions were asked posthumously, would the audience cheer? Had I come to your house or read your book, would it have changed your mind or convinced you to look? If you don't respond this time, my calls will cease. Speak now or forever I'll be at peace. My eyes are now open. I've parted my hands. Caught a glimpse of an angel and now understand. You knew quitting was something I'd never let her see. I heard her say uncle before you heard it from me. For the listening audience, you had done some ketamine treatments in a local facility. You said you had a handful, 5 or 6 different experiences?
Yeah, it was, and I'll give a shout out to the place, and I want to give a shout out. It's called Clara Sana, Klarisana. You can go to their website. They're in Austin, Denver, Westminster, which is just, between Boulder and Denver, and couple other places, and they're expanding. And again, I called in, answered some questions. I don't have a psychologist or psychiatrist,
really?
So I don't have a doctor, and nobody, and which normally you think, I've got to get sent there by a doctor. Well, in some cases, yeah. In my case, I answered a bunch of questions, and ultimately I answered the questions the right way. And then my insurance, or I've got Colorado Medicaid, it covered the whole thing other than a $39 deductible.
Wow.
So, and they're very reasonable. I believe you can get 6 treatments for under $2,000 without insurance or anything through them.
$39.
Most are like more like $5,000 for that same experience.
Okay. Now
they're a low cost deal. And hey, I'm telling you, you don't need a fancier chair.
Really?
So,
now, for people that don't know, ketamine is that a tranquilizer? Like, what is it? What is it classified as? I know it's dissociative, but I don't know what it's classified as.
It's in initial use, and its approval through the FDA is as a dissociative tranquilizer.
Okay.
And it was used as early as 1960s Vietnam War. It was first used on the ground in Vietnam. It's still regarded as the best choice through Navy SEALs, current modern day, because you can anesthetize someone completely, and their heart rate and they breathe with no problem, and so you can do all kinds of work.
So there's
but they don't feel any of it.
Not a real dire health risk if you're going to take it.
No, okay. Not at all.
The one thing, whenever I heard of ketamine, and I've never done it, so I don't know, what the experience is like. People always were, and I don't know if this is an urban myth or what, but the K-hole. Everybody talks about the K-hole. You slip into a K-hole, and is that something that, did anybody educate you on that? Is that a myth? Like, do you know anything about what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. I did. I've heard about it too. Like when I did dimethyltryptamine, check out that episode. But I did DMT with a woman who told me about K-holes, and this is about probably 8 years ago now.
Yeah.
And she was, just, but I don't know. All I can say is you definitely go somewhere, and it's, sure, it can be dark. Like my first experiences were darker. The rest were just like, you're gonzo. But I'm gladly, I'll tell you about all 6 experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. So you sought out the ketamine. You said you were depressed, you wanted to kind of get some relief from the depression, or were there more things that factored into it?
Out of fairness, its best purpose is within depression, at least currently. My new belief is everybody would benefit from this, 100%. But its typical use is for people who are treatment resistant within depression, and also suicide, who are either suicidal or have suicide ideation, which I definitely dealt with. And I'd kind of had pretty strong depression. For 13 years.
Wow.
And suicide ideation since I was 8 years old. Some level of depression. And then what I've just realized, I kind of didn't know this until quite recently, but I've suffered from anxiety my whole life and didn't know it. I thought I was too confident to be anxious. But that's not true.
Well, man, I tell you, I give mad kudos to Lexapro, because without it, the anxiety was crippling at times. So I completely empathize with that.
Yeah, mine was, but I just didn't know what I thought it was depression.
Okay.
But it was in fact anxiety. And so thankfully through plant medicine, mushrooms, psilocybin, DMT, and meditation first, that led me to both those things, and now this. But I'd gotten somewhat of a handle on it, but I couldn't erase the pathways. It was so easy for me to think about suicide, even though I'm in a great place. Like, I'm in the best place of my life in almost every facet I can imagine.
That's awesome. And you seem like a happy dude, so nobody would really suspect that.
Yeah. You know me for a good while, and you've always known me since I've been doing comedy, and comedy was a savior for me too. I should mention that, but not everybody can get into that, so I don't want to say, "Oh, comedy, get into comedy."
Sure.
I would say get into plant medicine.
Well,
that's easier to come by.
For people that don't know, comedians are notoriously sad and tortured. So it just makes sense that, you and I, anxious. It's kind of par for the course in that genre of entertainment.
Oh yeah, it's the thing we rarely, really, really talk about. True. We joke about. We don't talk about. So I fit that. Years, like, again, 13 years ago, just for the listening audience, I went through real big lows in depression and more than just suicidal thinking, but advanced stuff, and then sought out treatment, realizing I kind of hit my bottom point, and different. Got assigned all kinds of names as far as bipolar, manic,
manic depressant.
I don't even know. Like, every single possible thing was given to me, and every drug was given to me over the course of a year and a half. And ultimately, I was just really, really, I was dealing with anxiety and also dealing with a really bad environment. I was in a terrible marriage, and I thought I was stuck, forever, and it was just, so anyway, and I had no coping mechanisms.
Well, let's talk about you said pharmaceuticals. They put you on a bunch of pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, every one of them.
Did they act as just kind of like a stopgap to give you a little bit of relief? Did they do anything?
Yeah, at times, like, the best thing I remember was, I don't know which one it is, but it's some kind of sedative that's pretty common. But yeah, they and then Adderall, like, too, because I was ADD and ADHD, and that's probably the closest thing that I could have been described as. But like, but still, like, I don't like being up 3 days in a row or not sleeping until 4 every single day when I'm not sleeping for days in a row. Like, that sucked, and didn't matter how productive I was. Like, yeah, great. Oh, I got all this done, and I'm this crazy person.
Oh yeah, well, I got misdiagnosed with ADHD as well, and my main symptom was anxiety. So for some reason, the industry has a habit of kind of crossing those streams, which is weird because for me, when I took Adderall, same thing. It just made my head a mess of things I couldn't control, and I was up constantly. So if that's the cure for anxiety, I don't know.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And that's it, and I'm still kind of dealing with, well, I'm like coming through this thing right now. So, I don't know what I would diagnose myself with. Okay. I just know that, like, I've almost got a clean slate in a lot of ways. And that's one thing that I've come out of this experience with, feeling more of, not, and also the ability to have distance from my thoughts. So
that's great. So you get to look at your thoughts and examine them objectively.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, definitely. And and now, to not put the cart before the horse, but like, now things that used to really bind me up or get or maybe like a suicidal thought, which could still be rendered, I now have the ability to not feel like a piece of shit, pardon my French for it, to not like think, God damn it, I'm crazy, or think, any number of things that you can go through, because ultimately, like, I'm not present at that point. I'm not present. Like, and that's, I've got, and, I had a lot of lessons from this, but one of them is to let go and to remain present.
Yeah.
And the second, again, here's a tip for you listeners. The second you catch yourself talking to someone not in the room, you're not present. You're just not present.
Now, do they train you on that before you go into the experience?
No, that's me. That's what I've learned from myself.
Awesome.
These are things that I've discovered about myself, through this.
Very cool.
Yeah. Is that, like, anytime I spend time in the past, in the future, but I don't spend that much time in the future. Sometimes I do, and it's usually optimistic. So I don't mind spending a little bit of time there, but I'm typically, thinking about the past or sometimes a negative future. But either way, like, I'm just not here at that point. I'm so not here. And that's what I'm really getting awareness of.
That's awesome, man.
So yeah, so it's really great. I mean, I've just developed, such a greater awareness of that. And I don't know if that comes with this directly. I mean, I've put a lot of work into my life over a long period of time, along with comedy hypnosis. I've done these things in first effort to fix myself. The first reason I learned this, was to work on me.
Yeah.
It wasn't to like, oh, I want to do a comedy show. It's like, no, I want to fix myself. And that again, that's all brought me to this moment. Thank goodness.
I love that, man. And the thing that I can relate to, because I had a lot of the same perspective and the same relief from some of my macro doses of psilocybin. After those experiences, the things that pop up that would torture me, that would just create a feedback loop that was just continuous and debilitating, I can hash those out in meditation. And so when I go into a morning meditation session following a macro dose of psilocybin, whatever comes up, I can handle it in meditation. And it doesn't even monopolize my entire meditation session. So it kind of made me, like you said, I look at things very differently, but I'm able to look at them with more objective eyes and knock them out, as opposed to making them something that will cripple me for the day or God knows how long because they stick in my head.
Yeah, and that's something that I've only, kind of recently come to realize too, is the clarity I wake up with after mushrooms. Oh my God, like, it feels so good to be like, oh, because it's almost like you're looking at this thing kind of for the first time.
takes away the blinders that kind of give you that monotony of the day to day, that you don't realize all the minutia of all the things going on.
With mushrooms, I wake up and go, okay, I feel clear, like I feel good. But with this thing, you feel eviscerated, like you feel in some ways like you've literally been rewrapped, reborn. Wow. From the ground up, like you've built the universe back up to this visual thing. And it's like, oh, okay, well, and with that in mind, everything's clear. Like, what else? If you just rebuilt the universe to look like this, then of course it's clear, because, well, you just made it like this, like.
So like a sense of just optimism and contentment, and you've kind of figured it out to an extent.
Yeah. Or yeah. And I don't want to say resignation, like, in some, like, yeah, I mean, optimism, sure, definitely. But I just like being resigned is part of this experience too.
Fully submitting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the actual physical experience. So you said you had 5 or 6 of them. What did you actually do? What was the process like to go in and undergo the treatment?
Well, they recommend that you don't have a lot in your stomach, water, food or drink otherwise, within a few hours of it, because it is a sedative anesthesia, and sometimes there could be nausea to go along with it. They offer you a Zofran, and you could also have it prescribed if you wanted it in advance.
Stomach discomfort.
They gave it to me, and I just put it under my tongue, and it did the trick. I never really had any issues, and it's kind of a tasty little thing that prevent nausea.
Yeah.
So they recommend getting a ketamine playlist, which I found. There's a number of them. The one I would recommend, I think, suggests 852 megahertz or something, or whatever it is.
Okay.
Either way, it's awesome. And I didn't realize how important it would be until I went through it. And if I forget, it's because of the fact that you can go back to this place like that with this music. You can really enter a very similar place, if in some ways.
So like hypnosis.
Kind of.
Wow.
I mean, sure, why not? It's all hypnosis anyway, so sure.
Yeah.
We all trick ourselves into whatever we want to think. So, yep.
So something that reminds you of that experience, you can actually put yourself back in that memory.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Especially because this music is so entrancing and nice. It's really relaxing. I'd recommend it. Like, if you do, again, ketamine playlist, you'll see this thing 852 hertz or whatever. I'll share it with you so you can maybe put it in the links or something. But it's fantastic and just great to meditate to. But it really, and here's a real hypnosis thing, whatever it does, it anchors part of that music to the experience. And so, like, there's pieces of the experience that I'm able to come back with, because it's like I revisit it, and I can almost revisit each experience in some ways. The most being the most pronounced, but even though it's you also have amnesia from the thing a little bit, so you're not going to remember the whole thing. Some people don't remember any bits, and a lot of it, like, I'll forget 90% of it, and then it'll come back later in the day or the next day.
Interesting.
And it's so you basically, there's this clinic with a few offices, very chill place. They check you out, of course, COVID style, make sure everything's fine. Check your blood pressure and your pulse to make sure you're okay, because you will get a spike in blood pressure. So if you have some blood pressure issues, there has to be some consideration for that.
Okay.
And if they want to make sure you're under medication that day or whatever, either way, that wasn't a real concern of mine. But it's funny, I'm not a very big sweater. Like, I just don't, like, unless I'm playing hoops or whatever. But when I went to the bathroom, like, it was like I just been, like, really under the gun or under some kind,
really?
Under my, so.
Now that was after the experience?
Yeah, that was just laying in a chair for 40 minutes, but I had sweat my ass off, for whatever, because it may, I guess it'll make your heart,
Okay.
beat.
Now, did you have, was there an intention or a pre-experience process to kind of put you in the right mindset?
No,
okay.
No.
Right.
They recommend taking it easy throughout the whole process, like before and after, not exposing yourself to negative stuff. They recommend maybe staying away from social media or the news. Don't put yourself, that kind of stuff, like just really take it easy, allow yourself to take a nap later, because it's a 2.5 hour half-life, which works out to 5 hours of it dripping down from your last push. And so because of that, one thing my partner said to me was, she said, after I did it the first time and every time, but if you've ever seen Men in Black, there's a character who takes on like a human body, and he's essentially a cockroach, and he's very awkward and like moving around because he's trying to work this whole thing. That's what I was like, at least, because and you can't drive on this. Do not drive home. Get an Uber. I Ubered back, and my partner took me back other times. But like, you may think you can do stuff, but like you'll realize hours later you're still like, like howdy doody in this weird way. So for those of you not watching, and that's all of you, but like I was just doing a howdy doody impression.
So for the rest of the day, you're still in that kind of you're still recovering from the experience.
You are, yeah.
Okay.
And you want to take naps, and you want to listen to your music again, and you want to revisit, and and you want to journal. Like, I've never journaled, and I haven't journaled as much towards the end of the experience, but the first couple I wrote a lot, and I've never written a lot, a lot for me. And the other thing is, and I started writing, like I started writing a bunch actually with this other writing thing I'm doing, but like it's just helped to release things. But I would you will start journaling. It is good to put things on paper, and I've had ways of thinking that it's otherwise you'll lose them, and so it's really good to and to consider, and it brings you back to what you experienced, because you're getting these messages in a sense from yourself during the experience, and you're just kind of recovering it when you're journaling.
I love it. Now you're in there. Are you in there by yourself? Is there any sort of supervisory party or anything that's making sure you're okay?
In the higher end deals, somebody sits with you.
Okay.
In this one, nobody did, and I don't think it's whether it's a higher end or lower end deal. It's the fact that I wouldn't have wanted somebody with me. Like the best way, and I did the research for those of you at home. I did it already. People don't want to be messed with on this, and I wouldn't want to be talked to, and I wouldn't want to be that vulnerable. Like, screw you, like I'm gonna work this out on myself. Like I don't want to. Whatever I'm going through, like let me work this out and be alone, and because that's what the studies have suggested, that people like don't want to be messed with, and so. I'm happy that I got the minimalist approach. And basically I had my headset on. I had these blindfolds that I wear, called Mindfolds, made by Alex Gray. You can buy them for $14.99. They're great. And so I had these headphones on, and then they check my pulse, blood pressure, and then they give you a shot in your rhomboid, in your shoulder, basically your shoulder muscle, and if that's the right thing. And
sounds good.
Yeah, I think so. And one of my favorite shapes is a rhombus. But so they give you one of those, and then you put your headset down. And I would recommend it. I wouldn't want to be caught or like have to deal with whatever else is going on in the room. So you pull that down. And for me, again, as a little bit of an experienced psychonaut, the first bit, even because the first day I got, they start from 60 milligrams. I'll give you that. They start with 60 milligrams and go up to 200 milligrams. And not everybody goes to 200 milligrams. That's like a high dose, I guess.
So that's throughout the experience, they may increase the amount?
Yeah. Okay. So for instance, the first day they were going to start me at 60. So he gave me a shot of 30. And then at 15 minutes, they come back and they check on you. And then, because it takes 15 minutes for it to be absorbed, I guess, by the muscle. So then they check on you, and then they administer the second dose. And so he checked on me and he asked how I was doing, and I was doing all right. And he said, I think I'm going to go up to 50. So they went, so the total would have been 80 for the day. And I said, great. And I didn't, expect a lot, because sometimes the first one wasn't a lot. But what happened was I went from being very relaxed, like, and I felt like I was still in the room, just like my whole body was completely chill, to my vision, it like got sucked away in the sense that I felt like I was as distant as the character in Get Out. For those of you who've ever seen the movie Get Out.
Yeah, in the chair.
Where when this character's in this deep hypnotic thing, you feel like he's 50 feet away from his conscious view. And while someone else has taken it over. The other movie I've told my partner about would be like Being John Malkovich. When you shut the door and you get sucked into this thing.
Okay.
And you got this distant conscious view. That's what for me, and also especially if you're in the Colorado area, for me it felt very much like so I'm sitting there with my goggles on. I got my blindfolds on, but instead of but it got a little light within them. It wasn't as black as they felt, but now it felt like I was wearing goggles with a helmet on, and I was 50 feet under an avalanche of snow.
Wow.
Like I didn't feel like a crush, but I felt like the closest thing to hearing me or seeing me was at least like that kind of distance and pack.
Now,
I spent the next 20 minutes there.
Wow. Did you feel intimidated or afraid of that sort of feeling?
Oh yeah, for sure. I did. I wouldn't say, and now I didn't feel intimidated or afraid that day, that first one, because again, I had some experience with altered states and was expecting expecting something.
Gotcha.
And also it was a very, very deep, again, and I'd heard so much the K-hole. So I was expecting something that was going to put me deep into something anyway.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay. All right. So I'm deep into this thing. This is what I should be getting. And when I came out of it, I felt pretty good. I felt very relaxed. Again, I was wonky as hell. Like I wanted to pee, because the one thing you want to do is flush this out. Like the only real downsides, even to the drug when abused, which I would highly recommend, is, and there are some downsides, of course, but like you can damage your urethra, or you can damage,
fuck. So your dick, you can damage your dick.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
You can.
I mean, urethra that's a core of the dick. So yeah, I definitely don't want to damage my dick.
So, well, you can, and your bladder, you can affect your bladder and stuff like that. So, because of that, but that's with high doses. When it's used as a party drug, it's at high doses. These are minuscule, if not fractional doses, even at the highest dose you can get at a clinic compared to what you do at a party. And it's also clean, and it's put in the right place. Like there's a million reasons why this is not that. This is not the horse tranquilizer that people worried about in the 90s called K whatever,
special K
or whatever.
All right, well that's good to know. So you really have to abuse the fuck out of it to get to the point where you're that volatile.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm sure its lethal dose, the LD50 on it's got to be through the roof.
Okay.
So, but and again, this is in a whole other place, but so anyway, the first experience was like I came away from it, but it gave me enough distance, even in that first day, that I could observe thoughts I couldn't have before.
Wow.
And within that first day, I don't want to say like I was forever changed, but like I wasn't, like I was able to deal with everything like that I couldn't, in a sense that it would become overwhelming, or I would be like, God, when can I move away from that? Like I couldn't get away from my own thoughts in some ways.
Yeah.
But I absolutely could, even after just one kind of experience with this.
That's fantastic. So did you notice throughout the multiple experiences, was there some sort of iterative process, or were you able to kind of determine where else you wanted to go with it, or whether it was 25% complete? Like what was your assessment midstream?
Well, I would say midstream, I noticed intermittently that I was dealing with everything better all around. Awesome. And that and even though perfectly midstream, I remember like I kind of upset with my kids, in not terrible, but like in a way I would have preferred not to have been involved in, but again, I still have distance and the ability to learn and grow and again, it was a very minor thing, but in this kind of vulnerable state that you're in when you're doing this, it makes it, everything's a little bit larger maybe.
Okay.
So emotionally or whatever, so, but so I went into it with just, I wanted like relief from like not great thinking, and again, and I'm pretty new to just realizing that I have anxiety or dealt with anxiety. So the fact that I've always called it and dealt with it as something else, like, I just need to organize better.
Sure.
I need to, like if I've got ADD, I need to work on this, and I've got this, I need to do this, but if I've got anxiety and I never call it anxiety and never deal with it, well, I'm screwed. It doesn't matter what else I do. And so ultimately, like, this gave me distance from anxious thoughts that I realize are unhelpful.
That's awesome.
Like that's, and now I separate, I can parse them. And I don't get them that often either. Like maybe once a day I could get, and I'm only saying that just because I don't want to be a hypocrite when I have a thought and go, oh, here it is at once, but like maybe once a day I'll have like the same thought I could have gotten dozens to hundreds of times a day before.
And it doesn't kill you. It doesn't monopolize you.
No. I recognize it for what it is. I recognize it as some shitty thought that's not me and doesn't, I don't have to sign off on or own or represent. And then it's gone. I just have to observe it.
Bro, that's really inspirational because, I mean, I'm sure a ton of people. I know a ton of people that are on antidepressants decades and decades and don't ever get that clarity. They just kind of have something to block the emotions or, suppress their shitty thoughts, but they never get that sort of relief where you feel like it will be sustained.
Oh, yeah.
Segment.
Now, where'd you get the mushroom shirt? I got to know.
When you saw me, you saw the mushroom shirt.
Mushroom shirt.
Bang, mushroom
shirt.
But see, you can't stop with the mushroom shirt. Now, let me show you something. Look at that.
Duh! Gerard, did you know on the inside was special mushrooms? Yes!
And we are back once again with my lovely wifey, Jill.
Hi.
How's it going?
I'm feeling pregnant today.
27 weeks?
Officially
Tomorrow.
In the third trimester.
Third trimester. Now, are there more trimesters?
I mean, the fourth trimester is...
Oh, there are more. I thought, third try.
Well, they say the fourth trimester, but that you are right, is after the baby's delivered. It's the 3 months after the baby is
I figured
delivered.
it was a trick question, so that's
kind
why I
of
wanted
a trick
to ask.
question, yeah.
So the fourth trimester, so basically once you're done with the third trimester, it's still not over. There's a fourth.
Well, the third, and then baby out, and then fourth begins.
Okay. After birth.
After birth.
Word.
Postpartum, if you will.
Ooh. When you hear of postpartum, you usually hear it as a prefix for depression to describe.
Yeah. But postpartum can be anything post-birth, right? So
technically it's postpartum. We need to promote more types of postpartum activities as opposed to just depression. I feel like postpartum gets a bad rap because it's almost always included with depression.
Actually,
so let's go with like postpartum jumping jacks or postpartum bubble baths.
Yeah, so partum in Latin means birth.
Okay.
So post is after, so like after childbirth. So, yeah.
So technically it is after birth.
It's after birth.
But we need to depression is monopolizing postpartum right now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, on all the blogs, it's like, postpartum breastfeeding and like just sort of like all these like little things.
Yeah, and you're still breastfeeding, so you can't like dose up on mushrooms to have that level of therapy.
No.
I guess you could. Can't. You could like pump a bunch of breast milk, do some mushrooms.
I mean, you could, but then how do you test to make sure it's out of your system?
That's true. I don't know of any home kits for psilocybin.
Or any drugs for that matter. Like alcohol you can test for.
Good point.
But I'm not sure of like, I don't know, like weed.
Yeah.
Like how long does that technically in your milk supply afterwards? I have no idea. Maybe there's a test. Maybe there isn't. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough one. If it were me, I would try to like find that window. Pump, pump, pump. Shroom, shroom, shroom. Pump, pump, pump. Shroom, shroom, shroom. Back and forth, back and forth.
I mean, that maybe for you, but not everyone has that same type of schedule.
Well, since I'm not a seahorse, I will not be doing that.
No.
You'll be doing all the physical stuff, and I will be there to support you.
Yes.
And in support of you, I did some research, and I discovered that there were some ostensibly credible blogs that talked about women, pregnancy, and mushrooms. And I figured it was a relevant topic, not only because you're pregnant and I love you and I want you to be safe, but also because the podcast revolves around mushrooms. So what can you tell us today about what pregnancy and mushrooms, how they can converge safely?
Yeah, well, I think we've highlighted quite a bit of mushrooms, so far throughout this podcast. And, we speak highly of the minerals, the vitamins, the fiber content, the low calorie, nutrient dense food that mushrooms can provide. And all of those are great in pregnancy. So we are not talking about magic mushrooms.
Okay, all right.
Those
I
are
was gonna
forbidden.
All right, just to make sure.
Yeah, there's just been too little, of studies, really no evidence at all supporting, what the effects of psilocybin would be on a fetus. And really, you don't risk it. There's a lot of things that you have to cut out being pregnant, whether it being like deli meat and hot dogs, from the risk of listeria, because listeria can, it can literally kill your baby. So
I appreciate your sacrifices, really.
Yeah.
And I have asked
no
at
sushi,
times.
no alcohol. I just want a glass of wine.
I have asked at times, would you like for me to abstain as well, hoping that you would say no. And you said no. So I want to thank you for all those times.
I mean, it's you know what? We both don't have to suffer. I can live vicariously through you.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Yeah, so just talking about mushrooms in general. So in pregnancy, normal culinary mushrooms, non-magic mushrooms, are all generally safe, in pregnancy. I mean, we're talking portobello and shiitake and lion's mane. Eat those, in pregnancy. They will support, a healthy diet. But something when it comes to raw mushrooms, and in particular, we usually cook all of our mushrooms, right?
We do, yeah.
But just, like on a salad bar, you might find, button mushrooms like sliced up. Generally, I can't really say that I've seen other mushrooms consumed raw. They're mostly cooked, but raw mushrooms are something that should be avoided in pregnancy because they do have trace amounts of carcinogens, which, can be cancer causing.
What is the carcinogen again?
So the carcinogen...
You told me, but I already forgot.
Yeah, so they have a toxin, hydrazine, which is found in portobello mushrooms. And then... shiitake mushrooms contain a naturally occurring formaldehyde.
Yikes.
And these are just some of the chemicals. I know that there's a few others out there, but they're all heat sensitive. So the second you cook them, those are killed off, and then it's magically transformed into a cancer fighting, quality of food. Yeah, and really in pregnancy, it's, erring on the side of caution because you're growing a tiny human inside of you. So your immune system is generally going to be lower than someone that's not pregnant. You don't want your body to fight off your baby. You want to support it and avoid as many toxic sicknesses, COVID. I mean, that's why pregnant women are, higher risk, when it comes to COVID. So yeah, at all costs, avoid the raw mushrooms. I don't know that it's a craving for many people.
No. And we talked about, in the previous episode, we talked about chitin, the outer shell, and how that's hard and difficult to digest. And there's absolutely no reason to put that extra strain on your body. So back to your point, cook them, eliminate any threat, eliminate the chitin that could cause stomach discomfort. And you don't want your body fighting your baby, is what you said. And I agree with that.
Yeah, it's just... And a lot of times, too, like when you cook foods, sometimes, people think, oh, well, you cook it, you're going to lose nutrition. Well, other foods, when you cook it, it increases the nutrition. So I would throw mushrooms in that latter category of, cooking it, making it easier to digest so you can truly pull out all of those nutrients from within, get those vitamins, get those minerals, to basically to support your diet and feed your baby.
I love it.
Yeah, and in pregnancy and even leading up to pregnancy, folate is an important vitamin.
What folate?
Folate, so it's a B vitamin, and it's essential for brain development and preventing certain diseases. I don't want to say diseases. What's the word I'm looking for? This is baby brain, by the way.
Illnesses, afflictions.
So like spina bifida.
Oh, disorders.
Disorders.
Okay.
Thank you.
Spina bifida. For anybody that doesn't know what spina bifida is, if you've seen Shallow Hal, the guy that walked on all fours, that was spina bifida. So when they do the spina bifida test, definitely get that test. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So folate or folic acid, it's something that you want to start taking prenatal vitamins beforehand to ensure that you have a high level of folic acid because it helps in the neural tube development. So that's the tube that encompasses your spinal cord from your brain down your spine. So it can prevent some major birth defects such as spina bifida or anencephaly, which is where part of the skull doesn't form.
Wow.
And like the baby has like a shrunken head. And a lot of times the babies don't survive.
So those
from
are
that.
things you definitely want to prevent against.
Yeah, and so much so that folic acid it's added to foods and enriched foods. So like cereal, because a lot of people eat cereal. Folic acid was added to that just to ensure that the general population has a pretty healthy diet of folic acid, just because not all pregnancies are planned or wanted, so you don't have the time to prepare for it. So folic acid is essential, and there are some mushrooms that are higher in folic acid than others. So those are going to be oyster and enoki. They have the highest folate content by a large margin when compared to others.
Oyster's a stud. It's the one that was
Yeah.
eating plastic last week.
It was eating. It does a lot.
It eats plastic. It tastes great. It has different colors. I feel like the oyster mushroom needs to get a little bit more props all around.
Aren't those the colorful ones too?
They are. They do everything.
Yeah, they can they're like unicorns.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then also, brain development. That starts early on in pregnancy. And as we highlighted before, lion's mane supports brain health, brain development, fights against Alzheimer's disease. So, eat a lot of lion's mane, to keep that baby's brain healthy.
Awesome. Yeah, we want a healthy brain. We want a healthy spine. Healthy
spine.
cranium. Yeah, all these things. If we can influence the health of our baby through mushrooms, fucking A.
Yeah, and really just in pregnancy, it's, you want a varied diet. You want to try to eat as healthy as possible because what you're putting in your body now, your baby will develop a taste for those items when they're born. So, yeah, and then, of course, lots of fiber, which is needed in pregnancy.
Yes.
Lots of water.
Need some regularity.
Definitely the regularity. You got to keep that going.
Didn't you just discover the recipe to regularity?
Well, I increased my vegetable and fruit and water intake, and
Fantastic.
I'm a regular 2 days now.
Oh, shit. So
TMI.
pray for us, specifically you, but pray for us that trend continues because regularity is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, when your body aches and, if you're not regular and your back hurts and your back already hurts because you've got, an extra 20 pounds you're carrying and a protrusion in your stomach, there's a lot going on.
Well, I thank you for taking time out from your busy baby cultivating schedule.
Yep. Happy to be here.
To share with us the info. Now, next week, just to give the audience a heads up, we're going to talk about the most poisonous mushroom. So we're going to flip the script a little bit. I'm excited for that. So stay tuned. But Jill, I love you and thank you so much for being here.
Love you too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Now, what are the expectations in terms of the way that's going to resonate going forward?
They recommend getting some kind of therapy or treatment or whatever alongside it. And for me, that's been learning cognitive and teaching myself cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay.
And so,
what does that mean exactly?
It works on slowing down, judging your thoughts, or not judging them is probably more accurate because we already do that. But judging them for what they are. if they're garbage, like in calling them out, and then again, being able to separate it. So it really goes along with what this chemical can do as well. But and so, so cognitive behavioral therapy kind of works on how you behave in response to things.
Okay.
And the nice thing is, compared to a lot of things, and the reason I'm kind of really keen on it is, it's different than, say, talk therapy, which you could sit and talk to the same person for 10 to 25 or more years, right? It's possible.
Sounds
it
awful.
happens. What's that?
That sounds awful.
Yeah, but it happens.
Okay.
People do it, and it's okay. Like, I'm not judging that at all.
Sure.
I'm just, but this is a 15. You work on this with somebody for 15 times. Now the thing is, 15 meetings.
Okay.
In between those meetings, the patient has to work on themselves too. It's homework. There's homework involved, and if they don't agree to do it, it's not going to work. If they agree to do it, it just about always works. And it's good for people who are treatment resistant. So it's really good for people who were like me. Like I was already looking into cognitive behavioral therapy before I finally, and maybe reading it and studying a little bit gave me the guts to finally make the call. And I'd probably say 100%, because I gave me the guts to make the call to get this treatment.
So you said 15 sessions, roughly?
15 sessions of CBT. And I guess you were, again, like I'm not that knowledgeable. There's plenty of information out there, but you work through these things and you evaluate yourself and you examine how you get to thinking certain ways, and then address it. And then again, give yourself distance. And I would say, like, if everybody who was doing CBT got a couple shots in the arm, this stuff, like, it really goes together hand in hand. So
wow. Now, what ketamine? It's a Schedule 1, right? Like the rest of the psychedelics and other things, or is it classified
3,
differently? Oh, really? I thought it was Schedule 1.
No, Schedule 3.
So that means it's
FDA approved for any treatment.
I had no idea.
That's why this is available. Here's the thing, and so I'll get back to so ketamine. Once you're given an FDA approval you can have a primary purpose, but you can also have secondary purposes that, if are benign, like, and it's benign anyway because it's FDA approved. So,
sure.
If I'm going to use a little bit for something else, okay. And that's what this is. That's what it's not being called. And that's why sometimes it could be a little difficult with insurance, because it's an off use of this thing. But there's a lot of future and growth for this. It's really pretty exciting what's going to happen with this substance.
That's awesome, man. I love the fact too that the doctors are getting, clinics are getting involved, even though, there's that taboo around it. People are still willing to, take people that are maybe a little bit apprehensive about the experience or have tried other stuff and kind of introduce them to that, even though their primary care doctor's not going to mention it, or their pediatrician's not going to mention it. But the fact that they're opening their doors without, with the stigma being there and allowing people to get treatment is pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, again, and I with those other sessions I had from sessions, if you want, I can share with those things, because session 2,
please,
was another experience. Like session 2 and pretty much every experience started. Now there is a quick tolerance you gain on this drug. So session 2, I think I went to, we did 80 and then we went to 100. I think we went to 100 in session 2. So it was 50, which was the big dose that like put me over last time. I got one of those. Again, very relaxed. It was 15 minutes. 15 minutes felt maybe like 5 minutes. It felt a little short. Felt, I was in a pretty good place, felt relaxed, maybe like, half the time. So there's some time loss or differentiation or whatever. But then when that second dose hit, again, I felt like at that point I was at the top of this building, and then I started crumbling backwards and dropping.
Wow.
And my whole consciousness started dropping, similar to like that of a video game. Like it wasn't different than if you could imagine just dropping down some endless, well. in a video game kind of experience, bricks, coming up around you and stuff like that. And I felt that for a while. And then just kind of felt, incredibly, again, I felt that being packed under kind of ice again. So those are my first two experiences, and were very similar in that sense, and not too heavy duty, a little dark. I mean, I would say they were dark, but I don't remember that part. So if you're listening at home and you have your second one and go, holy shit, sorry, it may have been darker than I'm explaining. Because I think those first two were darker, but like where I got through just feeling kind of shitty, by the third one though, so the third one was 100. I went from 100 to 140.
Was it broken up into two?
Yeah, 70
Okay.
and 70. And I don't remember the exact doses in between. I videotaped myself talking about it, but like I don't remember the exact number, but it went up a bunch.
Okay.
And from the third one through the sixth one, I did question my sanity, and I did question whether I had just died. I was more that I thought, oh Christ, I've just been like sucked into the universe. Like I felt like I had become part of the digital universe 100% without thinking this is a psychedelic I'm on.
Did it feel right? Did it feel like that was the way it was supposed to be?
Oh, 100%. I mean,
Okay.
I completely disassociated.
All right.
You're supposed to do that. Like that's the medicine, like the magic really kicks in when you think you're toast.
Okay.
Like if you're just having some kind of cool movie ride experience at, Busch Gardens, that's not enough.
Okay.
You've got to go, oh shit, they gave me too much. But and the thing, you're not like trip like in some kind of weird slow-mo deal like I just kind of suggested, but you're pretty lucid, and you think you've just crossed into another thing. Sure. And your consciousness is completely gonzo. Like wow. you're so again, like for me personally at my weight, and they it is variable for milligrams to kilograms, but for me for the 140 through, and I did get up to the 200 milligram, that my final dose was 200 milligrams. Each of those times and more every time up, I completely thought I had become, I kind of thought I had died, but death wasn't the experience. I thought I had just become part of the matrix. I thought I had completely like become part of this digital thing where my brain had been completely sucked into the digital reality we can't see any, around us.
Insane.
And so thus and I thought I had lost my mind. I thought I had lost everything around me. I thought, if this is my new reality, that old reality, and I felt it was, I mean, there's so many things, honestly, I'd have to put into complete words all the experiences.
Sure.
But you absolutely feel like you've been absorbed into the simulated reality that's not visible.
One question, does it have does it have a peak? Is there a climax, kind of like with psilocybin where you ramp up to it? Is it like a persistent strength the whole way through?
No, it moves pretty quick on that second shot.
Okay.
And it stays there for a while. You're there for a good half hour, or 20 minutes peaking.
Okay.
Like you're peaking for a bit. And
when you end the experience, is it like an abrupt ending, or is there like a gradual decline?
No, almost similar to I'm trying to think of the movie. Well, kind of like Indiana Jones. I will make a lot of movie references, everybody, where the skin comes off of everybody, the Nazis at the end, where it's melting. Yeah. Well, if you did that in reverse, I start feeling like my flesh is returning back. The only thing that I'm connected to, and I kind of lost connection in part of the latter journeys, was the wind bags I was sucking on, because I'm always conscious of breathing when I trip.
Okay.
Because I always want to make sure that I'm breathing.
Sure.
And it's my connection back to conscious reality. So but like I felt like literally I could feel like I was just operating these windbags. They weren't my lungs. There was these, I mean, they were what they really are. And so when I came back, like you start to feel your flesh come back and you feel your hands, I could feel my hands and I could feel the bone, like everything starting to kind of like reform in a sense.
Yeah.
And then, again, I usually try to use the restroom right after that because you want to hydrate a bunch just to get this out of your system.
Okay.
As much as possible, as fast as you can, and you haven't drank for an hour and a half because they don't want you to drink any water.
Can't go pee in the middle of the session.
No, yeah, you want to pee before you start, but of course you haven't gone for a while, and you also getting this out, but that's a funny world, like walking around in this half, anesthesia kind of experience, and everything's there are. I mean, the first few things you may not get a lot. Oh my God, I forgot. There are a lot of parts where you feel like you're completely behind the scenes of reality. That's another thing that, for those of you who've ever been in a theater where you look up in the corners and it's all black, but there's some purple paint and purple lights and things because that's where you can put things and it's not going to affect what's on stage.
Yeah.
You go there, like you spend time in that place. Like it's this behind the scenes part of reality. And again, maybe it's just my reality. But damn, did it feel like I mean, my takeaway is you get to really tap into these other realities that are incredibly digital, not dissimilar from this one, but just like fast moving and unbelievable, like just really, really something. But again, because of the distance between that reality and this one, when you come back to it, you're separate from all those bullshit ideas you used to have.
Man, I'm so happy for you that you had that experience. I mean, that is extremely positive. That I learned a lot about ketamine. I really had no idea what it entailed, and I really, I want to at some point experience it for myself, but I am really happy that it's available for people that are struggling with whatever, whether it be anxiety, depression, feedback loops. I'm really happy that you found that, man. And I'm happy you shared it. I thank you. That had to be difficult to go through and come back and tell us all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, thanks. It's something that again, like would have been impossible to share a whole lot without this. But like I have a certain level of confidence and also a lack of concern of judgment of about anyone's judgment about and so because of that, like it's just a lot easier. Everything's easier right now, and I've just got so much distance between everything, and then I've developed skills that if I do get the least bit, if something comes in that I don't care for, I've also developed skills like here's a cognitive behavioral therapy skill. If you feel anxious, pay attention to something, like look at something else. Like for instance, I got a poster of the DC comic heroes. I've got Aquaman, Shazam, Superman, Firestorm, I think, isn't it? Batman, Flash.
Shazam made it up there?
Shazam's up there.
All right.
Captain Marvel. And but if you I've got all of them, they're all up there. But if
there it is.
Yeah, if you do that and like step away and like count 5 things for real, 5 different things, observe 5 different things, you will not come back to the same level of anxiety. You can't.
Interesting.
So do that. Like give yourself that gift.
CBT 101.
Yeah, and then you can start from some better place because you can't operate from that heightened place of terrible thinking. At least that's what I've come to realize about myself. I can't operate from shitty places of thinking, and if I catch myself being there, I got to do something, or just catching myself is pretty good. Like I'm not saying I have to like start counting things, but it helps.
No, I love it, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. For the listeners that heard or maybe didn't hear the name of the clinic at the beginning of the podcast, what is the name of the facility again that you went to?
It's called Clara Sana, KLAR, Claire ISANA, I think. And they operate out of Austin, Texas, Denver, and Westminster, Colorado.
Awesome.
And maybe New Mexico too, but they're growing and yeah, I'm a big fan.
Awesome. Well, Patrick, I love you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks,
man.
buddy. I love you too, man.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right, see you later.
Walk with me, baby, come on and talk with me, come on and take me downtown. Well, walk with me, baby, come on and talk with me, come on and take me downtown. Well, walk with